The Seahawks are getting a bit more respect coming from the Pro Football Writers Association. We're going to be diving into who earned all NFL selections as well as all rookie team selections coming up here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in, whether you are down in Sumner, Washington, or you're listening in from Bozeman, Montana. We appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week and helping Locked On Podcast Network become the #1 sports podcast network. Seahawks well represented on the Pro Football Writers Association, all NFL and all rookie teams. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the much deserved respect that the #1 seeded Seahawks received in national voting from the Pro Football Writers Association. We are going to dive into what the Seahawks should have learned attacking the Rams defense offensively and vice versa for Mike McDonald's defense against Matthew Stafford and company. It's a jam-packed episode coming your way courtesy of Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The AP All-Pro team is considered to be the #1 All-Pro team, but there's certainly other ways that players can be awarded for their performance from those that cover the game. Pro Football Writers Association announcing the All-NFL as well as all-rookie team selections. And Rob, the Seahawks are pretty well represented. There's certainly some snubs, as we talked about with the All-Pro team. There's a couple big names, Ernest Jones, not being on there that I found to be quite shocking, especially when you look at the All-NFC team. Ernest Jones was not represented on there as well. However, the Seahawks had 5 players on the All-NFC team that were recognized by the Pro Football Writers Association, 2 that were recognized by the All-NFL team, so a little better than the All-Pro first team that only had Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I think it's appropriate that the other one that was selected by all the football writers nationally and quite frankly worldwide, there are Pro Football Writers Association writers that are outside of the U.S., Leonard Williams getting the respect he deserves along with Jeffrey Simmons as one of the 2 defensive tackles that made the roster as it should have been for the first team All-Pro.
Yeah, I think that it is very well deserved, as you mentioned. I also think that frankly, Seattle should have had more players. The Denver Broncos led all NFL teams with 4 players making the all NFL team. The Broncos, of course, have the #1 seed in the AFC. So I thought that might be a little bit more even from a Seattle perspective. But it is, I guess, encouraging that JSN got the respect to be Seattle's lone offensive selection. Leonard Williams, as you mentioned, Seattle's lone defensive selection. And then, the 5 players on the all NFC team. To me, that is, again, one of the most encouraging signs here. Just the fact that it does recognize Seattle's, just overall quality of their team. Mentioned JSN and Leonard Williams, and then Devin Witherspoon getting the nod at the cornerback spot alongside of Quinyon Mitchell of the Philadelphia Eagles, and then the 2 specialists, Michael Dixon as well as Rashid Shaheed, both getting acknowledgement along the All-NFC squad. So again, I do think that once you started focusing a little bit more on strictly the NFC, then the Seattle did get its due credit. And I am also encouraged by the fact that Seattle had a couple of selections on the all-rookie team as well.
Yeah, we'll get to the all-rookie team in a second. There were a few surprises for me when we look at this. Like, I really thought that Ernest Jones would get the nod here, but there was only one off-ball linebacker that was selected. The 3 linebackers, 2 of them were hybrid outside pass rushers, and that's just a way to get more of those pass rushers on the list. And Jack Campbell was the one that was selected from Detroit. And again, I thought Jack Campbell had a very good season. Jack Campbell didn't have any interceptions, and Ernest Jones had 5. Ernest Jones was the first player in more than a decade at the linebacker spot to have over 125 tackles and 5 interceptions. I just thought that he had a phenomenal season, and he deserved to be that lone linebacker on there. So that would be my biggest nitpick. Even with the all NFC team, I don't have an issue with Byron Murphy not being one of the 2 defensive tackles. I wouldn't have batted an eye if both he and Williams made it, but that ended up not being the way that voting went. At least there, it felt like there were a few other names you could throw out there. I just feel like at linebacker, no offense to Jack Campbell, a player that I loved coming out of Iowa, but the stats don't match. Like the film doesn't match. I think Ernest Jones is the biggest snub there. I think Rashid Shaheed probably should have been an all NFL select. That's not the way that things played out. So unfortunately, can't get everybody that you want, but I thought this was a little bit more favorable overall, especially the fact there were 2 all NFL selections instead of 1 for the first team all pro that was selected by the AP. So the Seahawks a little bit more represented. As you mentioned with the rookie team, the Seahawks having both of their top 2 draft picks get selected by the Pro Football Writers Association. So that tells you nationally that, reporters and contributors that were covering other teams took notice of Gray Zabel and Nick Eamon-Worry, who both were selected to that all-rookie team. And Rob, I'd have to do a double check on this, but I can't remember the last time that the Seahawks had 2 players selected to the all-rookie team. Maybe that 2022 squad, but I thought even Abraham Lucas was the only pick that year from that group, Reek Woolen as well. So I guess that year, 2022, they had 2. But it's rare to get more than 1 player on the all-rookie team list. In Seattle, John Schneider hits it out of the park with both Gray Zabel and Nick Eamon-Worry, the top 2 selections here. And if either one of them wouldn't have been on the list, it would have been a travesty. But this tells you that the league, people outside of Seattle aren't paying attention to what the Seahawks have built with the recognition for both of these guys. And both of them got votes. From my understanding, this information was not released publicly, but both of them got votes for offensive and defensive rookie of the year. They weren't obviously picked for that award, but the fact that there were others out there that voted, I did vote for Nick Eamon-Worry in my ballot, but there were others that voted for Eamon-Worry and Gray Zabel. I didn't vote for him, but there was somebody else that voted for Gray Zabel as offensive rookie of the year. So that tells you the respect that has been garnered nationally for this football team.
I want to agree with you. I just think that Seattle still is being a little bit overlooked in this regard. I thought that Nick Eamon-Worry should have been a slam dunk for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Similar to the argument that you just made as far as why Ernest Jones should have been the pick for the PFWA's linebacker, even with it being the one off-ball linebacker honored. I really thought that with all due respect to Carson Schwarzenegger of the Cleveland Browns and the fact that, look, he put up gaudy tackle numbers for a team that isn't very good and it basically wasn't playing a meaningful game past, I don't know, September. So I just thought that when you looked at the way that Nick Eamon-Worry completely tilted the game in Seattle's favor for the number 1 seed, I really thought that he should have been Defensive Rookie of the Year. I would have been stunned to have seen Gray Zabel get selected as Rookie of the Year for Offensive Rookie of the Year, for any blocker, frankly, to ever get that acknowledgement would force people to take their eyes off the ball. And I don't care if they're professional football writers of America or the galaxy, very few writers are ever going to take their eye off the ball enough to acknowledge offensive linemen. I do agree with you that it is nice that he was acknowledged here and that he apparently did get a vote or 2 or 10 for Offensive Rookie of the Year, which wound up going to Teteroa McMillan, the dynamic wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers.
And I have no issue with that. For the record,
I don't either. I just thought that frankly, Nick Eamon-Worry, I thought deserved a little bit more attention for a Defensive Rookie of the Year. They didn't, release the actual ballot numbers, so we don't know. Maybe this was, just a 1 or 2 votes away from Eamon-Worry getting that acknowledgement. But just having evaluated both these players during their college days and certainly in their time in the NFL, to compare the impact that Eamon-Worry made for the Seahawks to what Schwarzenegger or any other defender this year, the rookie class. I just don't think that it's even a conversation, frankly.
Yeah, I voted for Jackson Dart for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I voted for Eamon Worry as my Defensive Rookie of the Year. So I do know that there was more than one vote for Eamon Worry. So there were definitely others. I don't know how close that was, though, because we don't have that information in front of us. But still, I thought there were some encouraging things here from a national perspective with writers that cover other teams, that the Seahawks were well represented on both of these teams. When we come back, we're going to revisit the previous two games the Seahawks had against the Rams, much as we did last week with the 49ers heading into an NFC Championship grudge match. We're going to start with the Seahawks on offense. What Clint Kubiak, Sam Darnold, and company should have learned from those two games going into this grudge match. We'll get to that coming up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. If you've ever had to try to hire someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed is all you need when you're hiring. Stop struggling to get your job post seen at other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I need to hire someone for this show, I go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to the Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood Prediction Markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood Prediction Markets change the game. It's people move actions, momentum shift. You can move with it. I always knew the game never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. I play. Play with Robinhood, now available to U.S. in the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. You live your team every day. Now take it up a level. Go ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today with Locked On Seahawks. No interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonseahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Rob, we are heading into yet another grudge match, and this really tells you just how dominant the NFC West was this year. The Seahawks have to go through the 49ers in the divisional round, and now they get the Rams for a third matchup, and these two teams split in the regular season, just like Seattle and San Francisco did. And last week, we had an opportunity to dig deep into those first two games, what we observed on film, some of the statistics that stood out, and we were able to look at what the Seahawks should have learned going into that matchup against the 49ers. And honestly, they did almost everything we talked about in that game. That's how you win 41-6. Let's do similar here with the Los Angeles Rams. The first game between these two teams, very similar to what the Seahawks 49ers first game was. It was pretty low scoring, 21-19. Jason Myers, 62-yarder, goes about 58 yards, was not able to get to the crossbar, so Seattle loses in the closing seconds. Second matchup was all about points, 38-37 overtime win for the Seahawks. And really, I thought Seattle, after Rashid Shaheed's special teams heroics, we really started to see the offense find it for the Seahawks, and Sam Darnold started to play his best football. I think there's a lot of things that they figured out in that game that are going to serve them well going into this NFC Championship grudge match against Chris Shula's defense.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. It was a kind of a tale of two completely different games. I love the way that you set this up, just kind of referencing how we came to the conclusion to have this type of conversation based off Seattle playing the San Francisco 49ers and how we kind of came up with this idea in the first place, and how Mike McDonald basically said that he wasn't so sure that the third go around with the 49ers wouldn't wind up being 99.999% different. Look, I think that number is a good way of articulating just how different those first two games against the Los Angeles Rams were. As you said, there wasn't a lot of points scored in that first game. The way that Seattle tried to attack the Rams in that first game and the way they tried to attack the Rams defense in the second game were very different. For example, Seattle attempted 44 attempts, 29 completions in that first game at SoFi Stadium. Those were both season highs. And they were, again, on the road and yet didn't allow a single sack. Of course, Sam Darnold was intercepted 4 times, and that was a big reason why that the team wound up losing that game. It was also different just in terms of personnel. Oluwatimi was the starting center in that particular game. The Seahawks distribution of the football as they threw the ball. A.J. Barner was caught a Seahawk high 10 passes on 11 targets for 70 yards. JSN was next with 9 receptions on 12 targets for 105 yards. K9 was third, 3 catches, 3 targets for 44 yards. I mean, that's a significant difference between the first two guys, both in double-digit targets, and then the third guy, Kenneth Walker III, at running back with only 3 targets. If you look at the next matchup, however, it is much more evenly distributed, with Seattle, again, coming out victorious at home, of course, at Lumen Field, but they were sacked. Sam Darnold was sacked 4 times in that particular game. The distribution, JSN caught 8 of 13 passes. Then Barner dropped all the way down 4 of 6 receptions, 4 catches on 6 targets. Charbonnet, 4 catches on 4 opportunities. Cooper Kupp got himself more involved, 3 receptions out of 4 targets. This was a game where Seattle, just the running game exploded for them. 25 attempts, 171 yards, 2 total touchdowns. It was as explosive an offense performance as we've seen from the Seahawks essentially all season long. But again, one that had 4 sacks of the quarterback. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle tightens that up. That week 17 victory against the Rams had Jalen Sandell at the center position, Josh Jones, of course, with that left tackle. So it's going to be interesting to see what Seattle takes away from those 2 matches, because they could not have been much more different with how they attacked the Rams.
And I think a lot of that, look, there was game planning that went into that, but I also think Sam Darnold looked back at that first matchup, and he had one pass that he telegraphed that got intercepted in the third quarter that was returned back inside the 5-yard line. That was a big mistake in that game. However, that was more of a really good play than anything else. That was just a great job by that corner of making it look like he didn't have a beat on it, and he did. He baited him. And sometimes even the best quarterbacks are going to have that happen to them. I just didn't feel like Sam Darnold was I don't want to say careless, but there were some throws that were careless in that first matchup. There were some throws that were ill-advised that he had no business to be trying to throw. And I thought he did a better job of being smart with the football while still attacking at times. It wasn't the most attacking we've seen this passing game, but they still took some of their shot plays. They still were able to get some plays downfield in that second matchup. Rashid Shaheed had one of them. JSN had a couple of long catches in that game. And I'm expecting that we're going to see a very similar approach. Now, is the run game going to be a little bit different without Zach Charbonnet? We'll see. I think Seattle can still run between the tackles against this team. They had some success doing it the first game, more inconsistent with it. But I think you're going to see Seattle still continue to try to get that run game going, get Sam Darnold in a position where you can change his launching point a little bit. and get some of those one-on-one situations against a cornerback group that's really been struggling for most of the last 7 or 8 games. Last week was a little bit of a change-up. Caleb Williams made some really critical mistakes throwing the football with his decision-making in that game. You're hoping Sam Darnold is going to avoid that. And I'm not saying he has to go turnover free. It'd be nice if that happens, but you want to see him make good, sound decisions, but you still want to see the play calling create some of those opportunities for him to be aggressive downfield, because I think if you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice against this cornerback group, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you kind of mentioned the Rams' most recent victory over the Chicago Bears. Now, the weather was obviously a factor, and from a Seattle perspective, how they adjust without Zach Charbonnet on the field. I do agree with you. I think that Seattle should still be able to run the ball effectively. This is a Los Angeles Rams team that's defensive line, frankly, is better rushing the passer than they are in defending the run. And Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator for the LA Rams, has never shown himself to be a super aggressive blitzer. According to Pro Football Reference, the Rams blitzed 6 times in that first game, of course, which they won. They blitzed a total of 9 times in the shootout that was at Lumen Field a few weeks ago. In both games, there was only a fraction of those that were actually by the linebackers and defensive backs. And so I think that you're going to see the Rams probably be a little bit more aggressive and trying to test whoever is going to be playing that pass blocking role, the blitz pickup role from the running back for the Seahawks. See if Sam Darnold is going to just check to something simple like a quick screen or go over the top, while the Rams defensive backs are maybe not quite as good in man coverage. They certainly are ball hawks. And so that, to me, is going to be one of the real chess matches of this particular game.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw this out there again. This is nothing new. Get your running backs involved in the passing game. That has been a big thing to go against this Rams defense. We saw at the end of the first game when Ken Walker made a couple big plays down the stretch, and suddenly it was a 2-point game. And then he had a 46-yard play on a screen in the last matchup. So I think you get K9 the football in more ways than just handing it off to him. I think you find ways to get him pitted against the Rams linebackers and even their safeties. And I let my arguably the most explosive athlete of my entire team, other than maybe Nick Eamon-Warry. I think Ken Walker III's right there, though. I'm letting him go to work one-on-one in those situations. So that, to me, that's something I talked about going to the second matchup. I expect Clint Kubiak's to be looking for ways to do that and sprinkle in another screen or two to see if the Seahawks can catch an over-aggressive Rams defense, catch him in a bad spot, and get a chunk play that way as well. When we come back, we're going to flip the script. What did Seattle's defense learn? And I think there's a lot to learn from that last matchup, giving up 37 points to the Rams, and maybe a little bit of a lesson from what the Chicago Bears of all teams did last week at Soldier Field. We'll be breaking that down up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Kicking off the year, feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. When I stay on top of it, my energy, focus, and mood all level up. But let's be real, plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work better. Think clear focus, better energy, elevated mood, even that fresh skin glow. I've been using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine, and it's honestly a game changer, not just for the workouts, but every single day. And it tastes amazing. I'm obsessed with watermelon. There are 16 original flavors and 8 zero sugar options to choose from. Drip Drop's science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of the top collagen pro teams because it rehydrates you faster and more effectively than water alone. They have flexible subscription options, so you're never stuck without it. Whether you're hitting the gym, juggling work, or just staying consistent with your goals, right now Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Championship weekend is upon us. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. The bets you lean into with your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the show. Seahawks Rams Part 3 coming up at Lumen Field Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time start. Looking forward to yet another grudge match. And the Seahawks are hoping to win this one just like they did against the 49ers and punch a ticket to the Super Bowl for the first time since February 2015. Rob, it's interesting because we talked about this last segment that the two games between the Seahawks and Rams were much different. You could say that the 49ers games were both the regular season ones were very similar, low scoring affairs, not a lot of points. That was the way it was the first game these teams played. But then at Lumen Field, week 16, 38-37, Seattle wins in overtime. A lot of points, a lot of yards. And Mike McDonald's defense, really the only other game that they got exposed like this was the Tampa Bay game, and they had a ton of injuries in that game. They were much healthier against the Rams. They gave up over 500 yards of total offense. Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua went off. And, you know, it's funny, going back and watching the film, and Mike McDonald talked about this, Rob, the day after the game. He felt like in hindsight that he tried to fit in too much in a short week, and his guys were not necessarily as sure and confident in where they were supposed to be, and the communication was off. There were definitely some broken coverages that contributed to Puka Nacua having the incredible night that he had. And that's not taking anything away from him. He took advantage of it. The great receivers do that. But Seattle uncharacteristically made some head-scratching mistakes with their coverage assignments. I'm expecting this time around Mike McDonald, he's got a full week so he can fit what he wants to fit in, but I'm expecting these guys are going to be a much better, well-oiled machine in terms of who's playing where and their communication to try to mitigate those busted plays that the Rams got so many of a couple weeks back.
Yeah, and that's the thing is busted plays. And busted plays often are what occurs when the front is blitzing a little bit more aggressively in the backside defense. The secondary isn't adjusting quite as quickly, and they're facing a quarterback who has seen it all. And of course, Matthew Stafford has. To me, that was one of the most fascinating aspects of looking at these two different games is just how often that Seattle blitzed in that first game, which of course, again, was a loss, but it was a loss in which the Rams struggled to throw the ball. Matthew Stafford only threw the ball for 138 yards in that contest. He completed 15 passes. And of those passes, the vast majority of them went in the direction of Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. The Rams did not allow a sack, and Seattle tried to get after him. But again, they weren't very effective in the way in which that they were blitzing the quarterback. So it felt like they dialed it up a lot more aggressively in the week 16 victory against the Rams, in which, of course, they were successful and ultimately in winning the football game. But they blitzed 22 times after only blitzing 9 times in the first game. And you mentioned the fact that the Rams basically just put up all kinds of points. I mean, in terms of yardage, the Rams got 581 yards in that football game. Corbin, there was only one other game all season long, that Tampa Bay game that you mentioned, in which the Seahawks even gave up 400 yards. It was double the amount of yards against the Rams in the Lumen Field victory than it was in the SoFi Stadium loss. So it was just completely counter to what a Mike Macdonald defense has always been about. So I think that you are actually going to see Seattle kind of cut down on the blitzes, kind of counter to what people might expect. Usually when it's this time of year, get more aggressive, blitz them more often. I think you're actually going to see Seattle play back a little bit more, force the Rams actually to be able to make some people miss rather than having those big wide open spaces, in which Puka Nacua in particular was able to take such advantage of.
And that's interesting because I would counter. I wonder if it's not the number of blitzes. It's looking at how they were blitzing in that game and trying to see if you can find. Here's the thing. Chicago last week, Chicago's defense is not, they don't have anything that compares to the Seattle Seahawks defensively. This is a team that has ran up and down the field most of the year, and their offense saved them. They held the Rams to 17 points in that game, and they got to Matthew Stafford. They sacked him several times. I think that Mike Macdonald is going to look into what Chicago did, and he's not going to try to replicate it because he's got his own defensive scheme. But I think he's going to try to find some ways, whether that's mixing in. I think bringing your interior linebackers more often this game may be something that we see, because they used Eamon Worry and Witherspoon quite a bit in that last matchup blitzing, and Stafford seemed to have a good read on that. I'm wondering if Drake Thomas, a guy that had 3.5 sacks this year, could be a guy that, I don't know if they go 22 times like that, but I would not be surprised if they're still fairly aggressive mixing those in. And you're hoping your defensive line can do what it did in the fourth quarter, because that's really when the game changed, when they were able to start getting to Matthew Stafford. 3 of their 4 quarterback hits came in the fourth quarter. They didn't get any sacks, but they got pressure on him and they harassed him there. So I look at that, and I also look at the fact you can't start off slow against the run this game. That was one thing that both these games had. Kyron Williams had great success running the football in the first half of both games that these two teams played, and he didn't do much in the second half of either game. But they were giving the Rams a lot of 2nd and 5 or shorter and a lot of 3rd and short opportunities. Fourth quarter, that changed. Suddenly they started getting stops because they had much better 3rd down opportunities. So the finding ways to win on 1st and 2nd down so that you can give your pass rushers better chances. I think that was the biggest issue for most of that Week 16 game. They just had too many 3rd and shorts and 2nd and shorts where it's like, we know they can still run the ball. We can't pin our ears back. Give your pass rushers a more optimal situation where they can actually get after Matthew Stafford in this game.
Oh, 100% agree with you. I mean, if you can get a little bit of pressure on Matthew Stafford, that to me is the ball game right there. As you mentioned, in 22 sack game, again, at Lumen Field, Seattle got 0 sacks. In the 9, and actually it wound up being 10 blitzes. Again, according to Pro Football Reference, 10 blitz attempts in that first game at SoFi Stadium. The Seahawks, again, got 0 sacks. The Chicago Bears, I mean, again, the weather conditions, I think, played a part. I like the Chicago Bears when they're healthy at the cornerback spot. I think that they match up better than their statistics would suggest. And Matthew Stafford, since about week 12, just hasn't looked like the same kind of guy. Maybe it's the hand injury, maybe it's the weather conditions, maybe his back is stiffening up, maybe it's the Devontae Adams being in and out of the lineup. But this does not feel like quite as explosive and versatile of an offense for the Rams as it has been in the past. But if Seattle is unable to slow down Kyron Williams, as you acknowledge, and if they're unable to get any kind of a consistent pass rush, and it doesn't even have to be sacks, but it does definitely have to be quarterback hits, then Matthew Stafford's going to throw for another 350 plus yards in this football game. It's going to be on Seattle's offense to try to match him in that regard. They proved a couple of weeks ago that they can do that, but I think Mike Macdonald is hoping that his offense doesn't have to do that the defense controls the game the way that it did a week ago against San Francisco.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. For the first time in Seahawks history, we will have Matchup Wednesday with the NFC Championship Game, and that'll be coming your way on tomorrow's show. Make sure to listen in for that exciting episode as we draw closer to championship weekend. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Go Hawks.